You are a free speech absolutist in this context if you say yes to each of the 5 different categories of individuals who wish to make a speech in your community. Do you say yes to the communist? Do you say yes to the militarist? Do you say yes to the racist? Do you say yes to the homosexual? Do you say yes to all of the groups, even though you may vehemently disagree with enormous sections of the content of these speeches? Do you grit your teeth and say, well, it's free speech and it's free speech? So are you a free speech absolutist? Now here we're going to introduce 2 new categories, Hispanics and Asian. Please understand that the Asian category has a fairly small sample size, so take the data with a grain of salt. The others are pretty good. Are you a free speech absolutist? 51% of men are free speech absolutists. Only 41% of women are free speech absolutists. If you look at not just gender, but race, 51% of whites are free speech absolutists. Only 34% of blacks, and only 27% of Hispanics are free speech absolutists, and Asians clock in at 35%. So which groups are maintaining free speech? And if you fundamentally change the demographics of a country, as I said at the beginning, you fundamentally change the values of that country. And one of the most important values in the West is free speech. And we can see that as the demographics of the West changes, free speech begins to decay. It is decaying throughout Western Europe. It is decaying in Canada to some degree. It is decaying as a whole. And the question is, what does this have to do with demographics? So here is free speech absolutism by race and gender. So here, if you're white and you're a male, 56% are free speech absolutists. 56% of white males are free speech absolutists. Only 47% of white women are free speech absolutists. And again, that is the difference between sometimes succeeding and sometimes failing when it comes to legislation. Among blacks, 39% of black males are free speech absolutists. 31% of black females are free speech absolutists. Among Hispanics, 31% of Hispanic men free speech absolutists, but only 23% of Hispanic women. Among Asians, 39% of men and 32% of Asian women are free speech absolutists. So if you like your free speech, the only group that has a majority is white males. And thus, if you're against free speech, you're going to rail against white males, which explains a lot of the cultural and ethnic battles going on at the moment. That 50% line, there's only one group above it, and it's not even that much above it, and that is white males. Free speech absolutism by intelligence. And this is from Word Scores from 2000 to 2016. If you have high intelligence, you are 78% likely to be a free speech absolutist. If you have only above average intelligence, that drops to 56%. If you have average intelligence, which is declining as a whole in the West, if you have average intelligence, you are only 44% likely to be a free speech absolutist. Below average intelligence, 33%. And if you are of low intelligence, you are only 17% likely to be a free speech absolutist. So look at this descending staircase to hell itself. And this is one of the reasons I talk about intelligence disparities between ethnicities, between genders, and so on. It is important. The values that we survive on, the values that allow us to continue to flourish in the West, came from extraordinarily high IQ people in relatively high IQ environments, in fairly high IQ societies. So that is an important consideration. Run through this once more if you're just listening. High, 78%, free speech absolutism. Above average, 56%, average, 44%, below average, 33%, and low, 17%. And of course, having high intelligence allows you to see down through the tunnel of time for the blowback of the principles you support in the here and now. And so if you say, well, that perspective is odious and must be banned, well, if you're smart, you say, okay, well, if we give people the power, they give the government the power to ban ideas, then my enemies are going to use it to ban my free speech. So I don't want that rule. Even though I'd love to get rid of this particular perspective, I'm not going to do it. based on principle and also based upon blowback. I don't want to give the government the power to police speech because they're going to use that power against me all too quickly.